After 15 years of marriage, my wife kicked me out in a storm after believing my stepson's lie. "Get out of my house! You don't belong here anymore," she screamed. I just walked away. 3 hours later, the police called. Sup, Reddit. My wife's 29-year-old son falsely accused me of something I didn't do, and my wife believed him. Get comfortable and let me tell you what went down. I should have known something was wrong the second I pulled into the driveway and saw Luke's Camaro parked crooked across both spots. That car was a 2004 with a blown head gasket and dreams of being fast, but Luke treated it like it was a Lamborghini. He'd been restoring it for 3 years. The only thing he'd successfully restored was my patience to zero. My name's Carl, 51 male, facilities manager at St. Vincent's Medical Center in Columbus, Ohio. I keep hospitals running. Boilers, HVAC systems, electrical panels, emergency generators. The stuff nobody thinks about until it breaks. I've been doing it for 23 years, and I'm good at it. Here's my backstory, since you're going to need context. I grew up in Zanesville. Blue-collar family. Learned early that nobody was coming to save me. I was married once before. Christine. We lasted 4 years before she left me for her CrossFit instructor. During the divorce, she threw something in my face that explained a lot. I can't have kids. Low count, low motility. She wanted a family. I couldn't give her one. Brad apparently could. So at 35, I realized I would probably spend the rest of my life being single because of that. I'm not gonna lie, it made me feel like trash. Until I met Trish. We met at a funeral. Her aunt's. She told me about her divorce, her teenage son, her job as a dental office manager. She seemed tired in a way I recognized. We were evenly matched. Both carrying baggage. Both looking for someone to share the load. The first few years were good. Trish was sweet back then. Grateful. She'd tell me I was the best thing that ever happened to her. Luke was harder. He was 14 when I came into the picture. Angry. Tested me constantly to see when I'd bail like his dad did. I didn't bail. Part of me thought raising Luke was my shot at fatherhood. Maybe I could be a dad to someone who needed one. It didn't work out that way. By the time Luke hit his 20s, I just wanted basic respect. What I got was a 29-year-old who treated me like a landlord he was stuck with. Now let me tell you about the night everything fell apart. That Tuesday started normal. 12-hour shift at the hospital. Busted condenser on the 4th floor. By the time I clocked out, my shoulders ached and my hands smelled like refrigerant. I drove home through rain that couldn't decide if it wanted to commit. Trish had made pot roast. Luke showed up around 7. No knock, never knocked. Just walked in like he still lived there, even though he'd moved out at 24, back in at 26, out again at 27, and was currently staying temporarily for the past 14 months. That's Luke in a nutshell. He went straight to the fridge, grabbed leftovers, and dropped into the chair across from me. Started scrolling his phone while he ate. "Hey Luke," I said. "You're getting gravy all over the table." He looked up just long enough to give me that look. That mix of I don't care and you're annoying me he'd gotten really good at over the years. "Yeah, I'll get it," he muttered, then went back to his phone. He wasn't going to get it. We both knew that. But I let it go. I'd stopped fighting battles with him years ago. The kid had a gift for making everything into a confrontation, and I'd learned that the only way to win was not to play. Trish came in from the living room, saw Luke, and her whole demeanor shifted. She got this brightness in her voice that she never used with me anymore. "Oh, honey," she said. "I didn't know you were stopping by." Luke shrugged. "Just dropping off some mail that got sent to my place." He pulled a stack of envelopes from his hoodie pocket, tossed them on the counter. I caught a glimpse before he covered them with his hand. Collection agency logos, final notice stamps, all addressed to our house. "What's all that about?" I asked. His eyes darted to me. "Nothing. Just junk mail." He swept the envelopes into his pocket and went back to his phone. I let it go. Should have pushed harder. His biological father had walked out when he was 8. Guy named Wayne. Sent birthday cards for a few years, then nothing. Last anyone heard, he was living in Toledo with a new wife and 2 kids from her previous marriage. Playing dad to someone else's children while his own son grew up angry. I got that it messed him up. I tried to be patient about it. For about a decade, I tried. I showed up for the baseball games and the school events and the late-night pickups from parties that got out of hand. I taught him to drive in my truck. I helped him with job applications and apartment hunting and all the stuff a dad is supposed to do. But at some point, I realized the truth. Luke wasn't damaged. He was just a jerk who used his daddy issues as an excuse for bad behavior. And Trish enabled him every step of the way. Trish sat down next to him, asking about his job. He'd been working at a vape shop for the past few months. Before that, it was a gym front desk. Before that, it was freelance content creation, which as far as I could tell meant making TikToks. I finished eating and took my plate to the sink. Started rinsing it. The rain had picked up, tapping hard against the kitchen window. Then Luke's phone buzzed. He looked at the screen and his whole body changed. Jaw tight, shoulders back. He looked almost panicked for a second. Then he looked at Trish. "Mom, we need to talk. Now." Trish blinked. "What's going on?" Luke stood up, leaving his plate on the table. Gravy still dripping. He walked toward the living room and stopped and pointed at me. "It's about him." I turned off the water, dried my hands on the dish towel. "Okay, what about me?" His face shifted into something I'd seen before. That "I'm the victim here" expression he put on whenever he needed Trish to take his side. "I know what you've been doing," he said. His voice was steady, like he'd practiced this. "I've got proof." Trish stood up. "Luke, what are you talking about?" He held up his phone like it was evidence. He's been getting into my accounts, logging into my stuff. I've been getting alerts for weeks about logins from this address. My stomach dropped. That's ridiculous, I said. Luke kept going, talking to Trish now. I didn't want to say anything because I wasn't sure, but then I found messages, threats. He's been tracking where I go, going through my bank stuff. Trish's face went pale. Carl, is this true? Of course not. I don't even know his passwords. I couldn't care less about his accounts. Luke let out a bitter laugh. Sure, that's why you've been giving me grief about money for years. Then he turned back to Trish, voice getting louder. You see how he gets? This is exactly what I've been telling you. He cornered me by the door last week, got up in my face about some dishes. I asked you to rinse a plate, I said. He put his hands on me, Mom. I didn't want to tell you because I knew you'd lose it. Trish pressed her hand to her chest. Carl, I think you need to explain what's going on. There's nothing to explain. He's making this up. Luke's chin quivered, just enough to look convincing. Mom, I can't keep dealing with this. He's getting worse. That word, worse. It sounded rehearsed. Trish's face hardened. I think you should leave, she said. I blinked. What? You heard me. Get out. Trish, I live here. This is my house. Her voice rose. This is our house, and I'm telling you to leave. My son doesn't feel safe. I don't feel safe. Get out. I looked at Luke. He was barely hiding his grin. I grabbed my jacket, my wallet, my keys, opened the back door. Cold rain hit my face. I walked out into the storm, got in my truck, and drove away. That was 8:47 p.m. At 11:50 p.m., my phone rang. I'd been sitting in the parking lot of a closed Applebee's for 3 hours. Engine off, heat off, just me in the rain and the kind of quiet where you can hear yourself breathe. I didn't know where else to go. Couldn't go back to the house. Didn't want to show up at anyone's door at this hour. So I just sat there, watching the rain. 15 years. 15 years of showing up. Of being the guy who fixed the leaky faucets and paid the mortgage and never once raised my voice, even when Luke called me names under his breath at Thanksgiving dinner. 15 years of thinking I was building something permanent. I thought about all the times I'd bailed Luke out, the money I'd loaned him that he never paid back, the cars I'd helped him buy, the apartments I'd helped him move into and out of. I thought about the years I'd spent trying to be a father to a kid who didn't want one. And I thought about Trish. The way she'd looked at me in that kitchen, like I was the enemy, like our marriage meant nothing compared to one accusation from her son. The phone lit up with a number I didn't recognize. Local area code. Mr. Holloway? This is Officer Reyes with Columbus PD. We got a report and need to ask you a few questions. You got a minute? His voice was calm, professional. I could hear the dispatch radio crackling in the background. Am I being arrested? No, sir. We're doing a welfare check based on some information we got. That made my jaw tighten. Someone had called the cops and painted a picture of me as a threat. What kind of information? I asked. There was a pause. Sir, are you aware of what your stepson's been saying about you? I'm aware that he's lying. Another pause. Officer Reyes cleared his throat. Can you tell me where you are right now? I told him. He asked if I'd left the residence voluntarily. I said yes. He asked if there had been any physical altercation. No. He said I blocked a doorway. What actually happened was I asked him to wash a dish. Reyes was quiet for a second. Then he asked a question that made everything click into place. Sir, whose name is on the deed to the property? I sat up straighter. What do you mean? The house on Glenwood Court? Is your name on the deed? I thought about it. I remembered the refinance back in 2015. Trish had tanked her credit with shopping debt and a defaulted car loan from her first marriage. The loan officer said we'd get a better rate if only I was on the paperwork. I'd agreed because I trusted her. That's what you do when you're married. Yeah, I said slowly. Just mine. There was a long pause. Mr. Holloway, I'm going to note that you cooperated fully with this call. The complaint looks pretty vague. No evidence of any real threat. You're not being charged with anything at this time. And the complaint? It's on file but unsubstantiated. If anything changes, we'll be in touch. The line went dead. I sat there for a long time, staring at the rain streaking down the windshield. Luke had screwed up. He'd assumed the house was Trish's, or both of ours. He hadn't thought about the possibility that the guy he'd just framed was the only name on the deed. I felt something shift in my chest, like realizing I had options I didn't know I had. I started the truck and drove to my buddy Eddie's place on the east side. We'd worked together at the hospital for 16 years. Started the same month, covered each other's shifts when life got complicated. He was the kind of guy who'd help you move and never ask questions. Eddie was 54, divorced twice, and had gotten to that point where you just accept that life's gonna throw stuff at you. His wife Monica was his third attempt at marriage. They'd been together 8 years. She was an ICU nurse at the same hospital. Good people, both of them. His porch light was on when I pulled up. Eddie opened the door in sweatpants and an old Browns jersey. Looked at my face. Looked at the rain soaking my jacket. Spare room's got clean sheets, he said. Coffee'll be ready in the morning. That was Eddie. I crashed in their guest room and stared at the ceiling for hours. Kept waking up to the echo of Trish's voice, telling me I didn't belong in my own house. By morning, I had a plan. Eddie made eggs and toast. We ate in his kitchen while the sun came up gray and weak through the window. Monica had left for her shift an hour earlier, but she'd left a note on the counter. This is on him, not you. There's coffee in the pot. I ate without tasting anything. Kept thinking about the night before. The look on Luke's face when he pointed at me. The way Trish had believed him instantly. He finally asked me what happened. I gave him the short version. Eddie chewed his toast slowly. That kid's always been trouble. That's putting it mildly. So what's the move? I pulled out my phone, started digging through emails, bank statements, county records, stuff I hadn't looked at in years because I trusted Trish to handle the household paperwork. That was our arrangement. She paid the bills, I made the money. Bad idea in hindsight. There it was. Warranty deed from 2015. My name. Only my name. I stared at it for a long moment. Remembered signing at the title company? The stack of documents? The loan officer explaining that Trish's name couldn't be on the deed because of her credit history. We'd talked about adding her later, once her scores improved. We never got around to it. Eddie leaned over to look. She's not on there at all. Her credit was shot. We refinanced into my name only for a better rate. She signed at closing, but her name wasn't going on the deed. Eddie let out a low whistle. So technically I own the house. She's just living there. The silence that followed was heavy. I spent the rest of that morning going deeper. Credit reports. Account statements. Really digging into everything I'd trusted other people to handle. What I found made me sick. Store credit cards I'd never opened. Phone financing. A personal loan from an online lender. All tied to my address. Some used my name. Some used variations. C. Holloway. Carl H. The trail was obvious once you knew what to look for. Amazon store card, $3,000. Best Buy, $1,500. 2 different phone carriers. Subscriptions to gaming services and streaming platforms. Total damage, around $8,000. All going to collections notices that Luke had been grabbing from the mailbox before I got home. The envelopes he'd brought over that night. The ones with the collection agency logos. The ones he'd shoved in his pocket before I could get a good look. Eddie looked over my shoulder. He do all that? Yeah. And now I get why he came after me. Luke needed me out before I noticed the collections calls. Before I checked the credit report. So he made up a crisis. Invented accusations. Got Trish to throw me out. Bought himself time to cover his tracks. The notification on his phone that night. The one that made his face change. I'd bet money it was an alert about one of those accounts. Maybe a payment due. Maybe a collections notice. Something that spooked him into speeding up his plan. Except he didn't know about the deed. And he didn't know I'd figure out the fraud. I picked up my phone and searched for a local attorney. Someone who handled property disputes and divorce. Yeah, divorce. I'd been avoiding that word all night, but sitting in Eddie's kitchen, looking at the evidence of my stepson's fraud, and my wife's instant willingness to believe him, the word didn't feel heavy anymore. It felt like relief. I found a name that kept coming up in reviews. Vivian. Direct. Gets results. Doesn't mess around. I called and got an appointment for that afternoon. Vivian Cross worked out of a small office in Grandview. Second floor of an old building that used to be a bank. No fancy waiting room. No receptionist. Just a door with her name on it and a woman in her 50s with sharp eyes and zero tolerance for nonsense. She'd been doing family law for 25 years. Start from the beginning, she said. Don't leave out the boring stuff. So I told her everything. The accusation. The storm. Trish's face when she told me to get out. The cop call at midnight. The deed with only my name on it. The fraud I'd discovered that morning. She listened without interrupting. Made notes on a legal pad. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair and looked me over for a long moment. Your wife's not on the deed? No. And she had the locks changed? I found out later she had. Got a text from my neighbor Gus about a locksmith truck in the driveway the day after I left. Gus was 72 and spent most of his retirement watching the street from his living room window. Nothing happened on Glenwood Court without him seeing it. Vivian nodded. That actually works in our favor. Shows she thinks she can control the property. We can use that. She laid out the plan. Filing for exclusive occupancy since my name was the only one on the deed. Documenting the fraud for the credit bureaus and potentially law enforcement. Preparing notice through the sheriff's office. And yes, filing for divorce. She said the courts were backed up, but because the deed was solely in my name, we could move faster than most cases. No complicated ownership disputes. Just paperwork. Don't contact them, she said. Don't go to the house. You write down everything. You keep your mouth shut. And you let me deal with the legal stuff. That doesn't feel like enough. Vivian smiled. Being patient is how you beat people like this, Mr. Holloway. They think they've won right now. They think they got rid of you. People who think they've won get careless. They screw up. They post things on social media they shouldn't post. They spend money they shouldn't spend. And when the sheriff knocks on that door with the paperwork, they're not going to see it coming. She was right. Over the next 2 weeks, I basically disappeared. Stayed at Eddie's, went to work, came home, wrote everything down. At the hospital, I kept my head down. Fixed what needed fixing. Changed filters, reset breakers, replaced a faulty sensor on the 3rd floor that had been driving the nursing staff crazy. Work was the only thing that felt normal. The only place where I was still just Carl, the guy who kept things running. My supervisor asked if everything was okay. I said I was fine. He didn't push. Every morning on my way to work, I drove past my house. Not to make myself feel worse, to see what was going on. Luke's Camaro was there more often, along with 2 other cars I didn't recognize. Lawn getting long, trash piling up by the garage. One morning I saw a delivery truck drop off a massive flat-screen TV box. The next day, gaming chair boxes stacked on the porch. The day after that, something big and heavy that took 2 guys to carry. Eddie's buddy Jerome drove delivery routes in the area. When Eddie told him what was happening, Jerome said he'd been dropping off a lot of packages at my address lately. Gaming equipment, big TV, computer parts. I wasn't surprised. Luke had always wanted stuff he couldn't afford. Now he was buying it with my name and my credit. Meanwhile, my neighbor Gus had been sending me screenshots of Luke's social media. Gus was 72 and bored. Luke's account was public. You can figure out the rest. Posts about finally being free from narcissistic step-parents. A video tour of his new setup in what used to be my home office. Walls painted black, LED strips everywhere. Comments from strangers telling him how brave he was. One post said, "Sometimes you gotta cut the dead weight to find yourself." I was the dead weight. I saved the screenshots. Figured they'd come in handy. Trish called twice during those 2 weeks. I let both go to voicemail. The first one was angry. She wanted to know why I wasn't picking up, why I was being childish, why I couldn't just come home and talk like adults. She said I was making this harder than it needs to be, like I was the problem, like I'd kicked myself out. The second voicemail came a week later. Different tone, softer. She said things were complicated with Luke, that maybe she'd jumped the gun, that we should figure this out together. She said the house felt empty without me, that she missed my cooking. Not me, my cooking. Neither message mentioned the fraud. Neither message was an apology. I didn't call back. At work, I kept my head down and did my job. The routine helped, gave me something to think about besides the train wreck my marriage had become. Eddie checked in every couple of days. Just, "How you doing?" and "You need anything?" That's the thing about real friends. They don't make a big deal out of being there. They just show up. Monica left notes on the counter when she left for her early shifts. Little things. "There's leftover pasta in the fridge. The coffee's fresh." Once she left a sticky note that just said, "You're doing the right thing." I kept that one. On day 12, Gus texted me a photo. A U-Haul in the driveway. Luke and 2 of his buddies loading boxes into it. The sim racing rig. The gaming chair. The TV I'd watched them deliver 2 weeks earlier. "He's moving stuff out," Gus wrote. "Looks jumpy." I forwarded it to Vivian. On day 16, she called. "We're good to go. Sheriff's serving the notice Thursday at 11. Be there. Keep your mouth shut unless someone asks you a direct question." I hung up and sat in Eddie's backyard, watching the sun go down. He sat next to me without saying anything. Tomorrow I was going to tear it all down. The night before the sheriff's visit, I couldn't sleep. Lay in Eddie's spare room, staring at the ceiling, playing out different scenarios. What if Trish started crying? What if Luke lost his temper? What if they refused to leave and everything turned into a standoff? I kept thinking about the first time I saw that house. Before the refinance. Before Luke moved back in the third time. Before everything went sideways. Trish and I had walked through it on a Saturday afternoon. The previous owners had already moved out. Empty rooms, scuffed floors, walls that needed painting. She'd stood in the kitchen and said, "I can see us here." And I'd believed her. I'd put my name on the mortgage because her credit was shot. I'd done it because I loved her. Because I trusted her. Because that's what you do when you're married. And now I was about to take it all back. Eddie knocked on the door around midnight. Found me sitting on the edge of the bed. "You doing all right?" "No." He sat down in the doorway. "You know you're making the right call." "I know." Still doesn't feel good. He was quiet for a second. Then he said something I wasn't expecting. "Monica walked out on me once. Back in 18. We were going at it about money. She packed a bag and stayed at her mom's for 2 weeks. I thought we were done. I didn't know that. Nobody does. We worked it out. But I figured something out. You can't force someone to pick you. They either do or they don't. And if they don't, running after them just makes everything worse." He stood up. "Try to get some rest. Tomorrow's gonna be rough." I didn't sleep. But I stopped running scenarios. Thursday morning came cold and clear. First real sunny day in 2 weeks. I put on jeans, a flannel shirt, and my work jacket. I looked at myself in the bathroom mirror. 51 years old. Graying hair. More lines on my face than there used to be. But I looked like a man who'd made up his mind and was going to see it through. That was enough. I drove to Glenwood Court and parked 3 houses down, near Gus's place. He'd offered to let me watch from his living room, but I said no. I wanted to be outside. I wanted them to see me standing there when everything hit the fan. The street looked the same as it always had. The maple tree in our front yard was starting to turn. I'd planted that tree the summer after Trish and I got married. Dug the hole myself. Watered it every week for 3 years until it took root. Funny, the stuff you think about when your life's about to change. The sheriff's car pulled up at 11:18. A big Chevy Tahoe with the county seal on the door. The deputy was a heavy-set guy in his 40s with a mustache that looked like it had been there since the Reagan administration. He walked up the driveway carrying a folder like he was dropping off a pizza. Casual. No rush. I watched from my truck, hands resting on the steering wheel, heart going faster than I wanted to admit. Trish opened the door before the deputy knocked. She must have seen the car through the window. She was wearing yoga pants and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a messy ponytail. She looked older than I remembered. Worn out. Luke appeared behind her. Barefoot, basketball shorts, gaming headset still around his neck like he'd been in the middle of a game. He looked annoyed more than worried. Like this was interrupting something? The deputy spoke first. Calm. "Ma'am, I'm here to serve notice. This property belongs to Carl Holloway. You have 14 days to vacate the premises." Trish's mouth opened. Luke shoved past her. "That's garbage. This is our house." The deputy didn't react. 14 days, sir." Trish found her voice. "There's got to be some kind of mistake." The deputy handed her the paperwork. "No mistake, ma'am." I stepped forward then, got out of my truck, and walked up the driveway slow and steady. Trish saw me. Her face went through a bunch of things at once. Confusion, anger, Something like fear. Carl, what is this? I stopped at the edge of the porch. This is me taking my house back. Luke's face twisted. You can't do this. We're gonna fight it. We're getting a lawyer. Go ahead, I said. While you're at it, maybe explain to your lawyer how there's $8,000 in fraud tied to accounts at this address. Luke went pale. Like, actually white. Like someone had just told him the worst news of his life. Trish looked back and forth between us. What fraud? What's he talking about? Luke's jaw clenched. He's lying. He's making stuff up to screw me over. I pulled out my phone, showed Trish the screen, the credit report, the account statements, the dates and amounts. Store cards, I said. Phone financing. Personal loans. All opened using my address. Some with my name on them. Want to take a guess who's been grabbing the collection notices from the mailbox before I got home? Trish stared at the screen, then at Luke. Something in her just gave out. I watched 15 years of making excuses for him fall apart in about 3 seconds. Luke, she said quietly, please tell me this isn't real. Luke's mask cracked, just for a second. Then he pulled it back together, flipping back to victim mode. He's trying to frame me. This is exactly what I've been saying. He's vindictive, and he's trying to ruin my life. The deputy cleared his throat. Ma'am, sir, this is a civil matter. I'm just here to deliver the notice, not get in the middle of this. You've got 14 days. He handed Trish the paperwork. I looked at Luke, held his eyes until he looked away. Couldn't even face me. 14 days, I said. And then I turned and walked back to my truck. Just walked slow and steady down the driveway. Behind me I heard Trish's voice getting louder. Luke, what did you do? Luke? Luke. I got in my truck and sat there for a minute. Hands on the wheel, heart pounding hard. I'd looked calm on the outside, but my insides were a different story. I took a breath, then another. Then I drove away. Didn't look back. The next 2 weeks were a mess. Trish called 11 times. I answered once just to tell her everything had to go through Vivian. She started crying, said I was tearing the family apart, said Luke was just a kid who made some bad choices. Luke was 29 years old. When does kid stop being a valid excuse? I hung up. Luke tried a different approach. He showed up at my job. Security called me from the front desk. There's a guy here says he's your stepson, wants to talk to you. He's starting to make a scene. I told them to escort him out. Hospital security doesn't mess around. Luke found himself walked to the parking lot with a warning that if he showed up again, they were calling the cops. He left a voicemail after that. His voice sounded desperate. The whole victim act was slipping. He wanted to explain. He wanted to work something out. He said he'd pay back some of the money if I dropped the fraud stuff. Some of the money. Like he was doing me a favor. I saved the voicemail. Sent it to Vivian. More evidence. The divorce paperwork went through faster than I thought it would. Ohio has a waiting period, but Trish didn't fight anything. Maybe she finally got it. Maybe she was too busy dealing with her son's disaster to waste time on a case she was going to lose. We split the bank accounts down the middle. She got her car. I got mine. Personal stuff was divided based on who bought what. I'd kept receipts for 15 years. The whole thing went pretty smooth, all things considered. The house was mine. That was never up for debate. During those 2 weeks, Gus kept me updated on what was going on over there. Not because I asked, just because that's who Gus was. 72 years old, living alone, nothing better to do than keep an eye on the neighborhood. Things were getting ugly. Screaming matches he could hear from his living room. Car doors slamming at weird hours. Luke's buddies coming and going all day and night. On day 10, Gus said Luke's Camaro hadn't moved from the same spot in 3 days. On day 12, Luke finally left. Took whatever fit in the trunk. On day 14, Trish was gone too. Gus saw her loading boxes into a rental trailer. Said she didn't look back when she drove off. I went back to the house that evening. First time I'd been inside in almost 3 weeks. The place was destroyed. Holes punched in the walls, stains on the carpet, kitchen buried under dishes and pizza boxes. My office gutted. Garage covered in oil stains and tools everywhere. 3 weeks and they trashed it. But it was mine. And they were gone. Eddie and Monica came over the next morning to help clean up. Jerome brought his truck. Took us the whole weekend. By Sunday night, the house was empty, clean, quiet. I sat on the back porch with a cup of coffee and watched the stars come out. First time I'd sat there alone in a long time. It didn't feel bad. It felt like starting over. 3 months later, Vivian called with an update. The fraud situation had gotten sorted out. I'd reported it to the credit bureaus, disputed the accounts, and let the banks handle the rest. Luke ended up with some kind of plea deal. Probation, restitution payments, community service. I didn't follow the details too closely. Didn't really care to. Wasn't my problem anymore. What I did know, he had a record now. And a decent job. Good luck with that, kid. His Camaro got repossessed around the same time. Turns out Luke had taken out a loan against the title to pay for all that gaming stuff. When he couldn't make the payments, they came for the car. 3 years of restoration work, gone in 15 minutes. Gus sent me a picture of the tow truck. I'm not going to pretend I didn't enjoy that. Trish had tried to make a claim on the house through her lawyer. Something about marital property and implied ownership. Her lawyer took one look at the deed and told her she had nothing. She gave up. Last I heard, she was crashing with her sister in Akron. The same sister who'd never liked me. Told Trish I was too quiet and probably hiding something. Turns out I was hiding something. The deed to my own house. Luke was staying with his biological father in Toledo. The same dad who bailed when Luke was 8. The same dad who never paid child support and disappeared after Luke turned 10. I'm sure that's working out great. Do I feel bad? Sometimes. Late at night, when sleep won't come, I think about the early years. When Trish actually smiled at me. When Luke was a moody teenager instead of a grown man with a felony. When I thought being needed was the same as being wanted. But then I remember that night in the kitchen. Luke's rehearsed fear. The way Trish believed him without even asking my side. 15 years of showing up. And I was disposable the second her kid pointed a finger. They saw me as a resource. A paycheck with legs. The second I became a problem, I was out. Well, now they're out. The house is different now. I painted the walls, ripped out the carpet and put in laminate flooring, bought new furniture, turned Luke's gaming cave back into my office, built a workbench in the garage where I've been teaching myself woodworking, made a coffee table. It's not perfect, but I made it. Eddie comes over on Saturdays. We watch football and complain about our knees and our supervisors, and the way the hospital keeps cutting corners on maintenance budgets. Monica makes chili sometimes. It's too spicy, but I eat it anyway. Jerome stops by with his grill every now and then. We cook out in the backyard and shoot the breeze about nothing important. Gus wanders over with his old man stories and his updates on who's moving in and out of the neighborhood. I'm not dating. Probably won't. I know who I am. Some guys aren't cut out for the romance thing. That's fine. I've got friends. I've got my house. I've got work that means something. If you're reading this and any of it sounds familiar, if you've ever been thrown out by people you carried for years, I want you to know something. Walking away isn't losing. Sometimes it's the only win you've got. Don't waste your breath arguing with people who already made up their minds about you. Don't torture yourself to keep someone else comfortable. Guys, we are so close to hit 100,000 subscribers on this channel. If you are not subscribed to the channel, please consider subscribing. It really helps hit that 100,000 mark. Thanks for making this dream come true.